Top 3 ETFs from Vanguard you can buy in 2020. Hi, I'm Michael and we speak about investing and personal finance. You can follow me on Instagram as well, and if you like what you see today, hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. So yeah, 3 ETFs that I think could be part of an investing portfolio, especially if you don't want to take the time to research individual companies and to look for individual investments. And so if you are interested in buying in ETFs, there are 3 really good choices here today in this video that will help you start investing and grow your portfolio. I hope I made this video interesting for 3 different groups. So for people that are watching from US, from Australia, and also from Germany. And we will go into detail of what those individual ETFs are, how to find them, and where to find further information. So get into the presentation first, and then I actually walk you through the different websites of Vanguard to show you how to find the ETF and what other ETFs Vanguard has to offer. So let's hop into the presentation. See, I haven't even shared my screen yet. I'm gonna do that right away. Here we go. That's better. So, top 3 ETFs from Vanguard you can buy. First, to make it as easy as possible, I basically have chosen the 3 ETFs that I think are most important, and that is an ETF that covers the entire world portfolio, basically all large companies across the world, across the globe. Second, the S&P 500, so all major companies in US. And the third one is emerging markets. I think that the emerging markets are still growing quite a lot and at a much higher rate than the established markets that are doing. So I think that's certainly a very interesting product to look at. And starting with the products in US, we have the 3 Vanguard ETFs, and the first one called Vanguard Total World Stock ETF, and in short, VT. Then the Vanguard S&P 500 ETF, VOO, and the Vanguard FTS Emerging Market ETF, and you find it when you search for VWO. And let's go on to the Vanguard webpage to see what they look like. When you go to the US website of Vanguard, you see different tabs on the top, and where you need to go to find all the interesting ETF is investing, and then Vanguard ETFs. And you will get presented with a site that shows all major or all main ETFs that are on offer. It starts with bond ETFs, as you can see here, and then you scroll further down and there are some other investment products. And there we get US stock ETFs, which I think is the first interesting category. And when we scroll down a little bit, we find the S&P 500 ETF that I was talking about with the ticker VOO. And when going and have a look a little bit closer and in what the ETF has to offer and what stands out, So that is obviously an investment product that covers all companies that are in the index S&P 500 and represents all 500 of those US companies. One of the greatest advantages of that ETF is the cost of that ETF, and that is just 0.03% per year as a cost to own this ETF. And we obviously can see that, so they're talking about a hypothetical invested $10,000 in 2010, would have grown to now 35,000. And that's actually quite a lot. And that's obviously represented the growth of the S&P 500. But as you can see, that was certainly a very good investment over the last couple of years. And going a little bit further down, you see where that ETF is investment. You get some further ideas, and you even see the largest companies within that ETF, which is Microsoft, Apple, Alphabet, Amazon. So you buy into all companies in US, but those bigger companies obviously represent the biggest part of that ETF. Going into the total world ETF, as you can see, it's a tiny bit more expensive, and that's obviously because Vanguard has to buy ETFs from a lot of different countries, and that's why that's a little bit more expensive, but still very cheap when we will see the prices for ETFs in Australia and Germany. So certainly very, very cheap in America. And as you can see, the biggest companies here are still the ones in US, but you can see on 9 there is Alibaba Group, and that's where you can see that there actually is a little bit of diversification. But here you can see where all the how the ETF is diversified. So you can see 60% is still in North America, which basically is US, and almost 10% is in emerging markets, 20%, almost 20% or 18.10% is in Europe, and 12.4% in the Pacific region, which includes Australia, for example. The third one you could buy when you are in America would be the Vanguard FTSE Emerging Market ETF, the ticker code VWO. The price is 0.1% per year. The risk here is a little bit higher. Obviously, emerging markets certainly have a little bit of a higher volatility. And you can see that over the last couple of years and even the last 10 years, the emerging market did not grow as significantly as the S&P 500. So over the last couple of years, the US investment certainly was much better in terms of the profit than an emerging market ETF. So yeah, these are three different ETFs that you could buy if you are in the US, and all those three ETF would be certainly a great start to get a diversified portfolio and to get exposure to the share market without actually needing to buy individual companies and to research individual companies. And as always, I think it is important that you consider buying into investment over time and on a regular basis. So if you buy every month or every couple of months into one of those ETF, you will grow your investment portfolio over time, and you will earn more and more dividends, and your investment portfolio will grow. Going into onto the next slide, into the next country, basically, in Australia, we have the Vanguard MSCI Index International Share ETF, VGS, which is one of the most popular ETFs here in Australia. And then we have the Vanguard US Total Market Shares Index ETF, called the ticker code VTS, the Vanguard FTSE Emerging Markets ETF, ticker code VGE, and last, for everyone who would be interested in investing in just Australian companies, there is the Vanguard Australian Shares Index ETF, ticker code VAS. And going onto the web page, the Australian web page from Vanguard, we can see that it's a very similar web page as the US web page, and you can find all the different ETFs on here as well. Very similar. You go on investments and you go to exchange traded funds. And there you find all different ETFs that Vanguard offers in Australia. First, again, the one that represents an investment in all companies across the globe, and that's the MSCI Index, MSCI World, basically, ticker called VGS. As you can see in Australia, it's a little bit more expensive. You have to pay 0.18% per year to be invested in that ETF. You see the different characteristics of that ETF, what the earnings price per earnings ratio is, for example, and again, the biggest holdings in that ETF. And you can see here that they are all a tiny bit different. This World ETF, for example, does not have Alibaba on position 9, but it has Nestle, a European company. So they are, and Procter & Gamble on 10. So they are, but the first 8 holdings are the same, with just the positions are slightly different. So the US one started with Microsoft first, but yeah, they're all very different and very equal in their setup. The total US market ETF that you could buy in Australia has the ticker code VTS, and again, a very, very cheap ETF with just 0.03% per year, so very similar to the price we had in the US. As you can see, the same US companies as in the US equivalent ETF. The price per earnings ratio, interesting to see, is a little bit higher than in the World ETF. But yeah, that would be an option to invest in the US market here from Australia. Then an emerging market ETFs with the ticker code VGA. That's with, as you can see, a little bit more expensive. So it's almost 0.5% per year that you have to pay in ETF costs. And having a look at the companies that ETF is invested in, as you can see, Alibaba is one of the greatest holdings, and then all the other companies, mainly from China and some from Japan. And looking at the performance over the last couple of years, you can see that in last year compared to the S&P 500, obviously that wasn't as strong as international share markets were over the last years. And the last one is an Australian index, so basically an investment in the ASX, and it represents the 300 largest companies in Australia with the ticker code VAS. It's a cheap ETF again, 0.1% per year. And the Australian share market actually has developed very well over the last year. So you can see that the VAS had a performance of almost 25% over the last year. And going into our last section, the ETFs from Germany, jumping into the presentation again, just to show you guys an overview of the 4 ETFs you could consider when buying ETFs from Vanguard in Germany and on the German market. That would be the all-world ETF, would be VWCE, the S&P 500 would be VUAA, the emerging markets ETF would be VFEA, and the DAX in this case, which is the largest index in Germany, would be VDXX. And going to the Vanguard webpage in Germany. As you can see, the layout is a tiny bit different, but you will find all ETFs in pretty much the same spot in Anlageprodukte and then ETFs. And there you will find a list of all ETFs that are offered in Germany or in Europe, basically. But I certainly would prefer buying those ETFs on German markets because it is certainly a little bit cheaper to buy. Going through the list again, we have the all-world ETF with a very similar spec sheet. And as you can see here, this ETF can be actually purchased on different exchanges in Europe. But if you are in Germany, I certainly would recommend buying with the ticker code I mentioned in my presentation, which would be this one, and that is available at all major German stock exchange. Same for all the other ones. As you can see, the S&P 500. With the ticker code VUAA. And obviously what I wanted to show you was the price. And this is 0.07% per year for the S&P 500. And I missed to look that up for the all world. That was 0.22% per year. Looking at the emerging markets ETF with the ticker code VFEA, and that is a price that the cost per year is 0.22%. And last but not least, the DAX index, which has a pretty low cost of 0.1% per year. And having a look at the companies that are included in this ETF, we can't even find them here. Let's see if we get some more information on that ETF to see the top holdings, but it's certainly the entire DAX index, so all 30 companies in the DAX. Cool. Yeah, I hope this was interesting to you and interesting for you and gave you a bit of an idea what ETFs you can buy. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like at that video, and I hope everything worked well, because I streamed today not just to YouTube but also to Facebook. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.